and Democratic campaign consultant Doug Schoen.
Sure.
Doug, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
To be here.
Your thoughts on that report?
Well, look, it's obviously extremely troubling and is the sort of thing that can and probably will be a continuing problem for Secretary Clinton. But what we don't see there is any sense of intent on the secretary's part to allow this to happen. So I say that the standard for prosecution is gross negligence. It isn't clear to me that that rises to that level, but, Maria, I would be not telling the truth if I didn't say that's very worrisome and concerning both as a citizen and as a political advisor.
Well,
Anthony?
I mean, the question came up earlier in the week about FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, and people feel she was trying to avoid that level of disclosure. Why didn't she just come out and say, listen, that's what I was trying to do because the law is flawed? Why did she take this super defensive, tone-deaf response to the whole thing?
Because she didn't want to say, Anthony, that she was seeking secrecy when, in fact, as Lizzie's report just suggested, she was actually doing the opposite and putting us at risk. And so it got convoluted. It was story after story. And I don't think you need to be a Democrat as I am or a Republican as you are to see that the story doesn't add up.
I'm not really trying to pick on her. I'm just really trying to understand the facts.
I think
not a partisan thing for me. It's more of a...
I think she was trying to hide things. I think your premise of your question is right. She was trying to hide things. It went terribly wrong. She told a bunch of stories that didn't prove to be accurate. She did have the right to do it, but it was clearly an ill-conceived judgment. And as I said, the standard for charges is, was she grossly negligent? There certainly was no criminal intent, that's for sure. But that's what the Justice Department and the FBI are now determining.
We got the hearing on Thursday. She's headed to Capitol Hill this Thursday to testify in front of the Benghazi committee. Will this hurt her in the polls? What are you expecting to come out of this meeting on Thursday?
I don't think this itself will hurt her. I think she is only really going to be hurt now if there was a showing, A, that national security was in fact compromised, a definitive showing, or we get a sense from the Justice Department and the FBI that she or those close to her committed illegal acts.
Can we really question whether or not national security was compromised? I mean, yeah, it was.
Well, the president has said the opposite. She said the opposite. It remains an open question.
It just seems like the left is still very successfully painting this as right-wing conspiracy and, all just brought up on a daily basis to bring her down in the polls. That being said, I have to ask you, since you're here, Doug, it's great to see you.
Please.
About Joe Biden. I mean, because this new poll out shows that there's just not a huge appetite from Democrats for him to enter this race, despite what I think everybody was thinking leading up to him potentially getting in.
Sandra, you couldn't be more correct. Two things. First, Secretary Clinton did extremely well in the Democratic debate, the polls, and I think all neutral observers agree. But second, Joe Biden's candidacy, I think, is premised on the question that Maria asked, which is there culpability on the part of Secretary Clinton or those close to her that would lead to serious questions being asked about her candidacy? If so, if Joe Biden gets in, as I think increasingly people are expecting he will, he is effectively setting himself up as Anthony, as we learned in law school, the remainder man if Hillary's candidacy crashes. Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's my hypothesis as to why he's doing it.
Why did he wait so long? I mean, was he waiting for her to crash?
Yes, that's what I think.
He was waiting for her to crash, and he was going to jump in, as the savior.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's.
And then she did a great job on the debate. She's had success recently, and now he says to himself, well.
He says, let's wait for the hearing on Thursday, see what happens, and then make a final decision. And I think he will.
There's one person in America that can beat Hillary Clinton. You want to know who it is?
Hillary Clinton.
Correct.
Yes, exactly. When have you ever seen an election, Anthony, to your point, where the leading candidate's biggest opponent is not the field, but herself and law enforcement?
Yeah, I think it has to do with sometimes wanting something too much, or as an athlete, you get super tense and you forget to say the things that you mean, and she's certainly guilty of that.
Or you make misjudgments about how you're going to handle things like the emails, which comes back to haunt you.
Right. Doug, good to have you on the program.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
Thanks so much for your insights, Doug Schoen there.